promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar. Good afternoon and many thanks for tuning into West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. This is Newslink and here are the top stories. Senegalese opposition coalition, Here We Ask Can We, announces a massive rally on May 19th to support its leader Ousmane Sonko. The African Union AU pledges support to Bamako as the transitional authorities prepare for the June 18th referendum. The Judicial Staff Association of Ghana threatens an indefinite strike if negotiation with the Labour Commission fails.
Our demand is that the President of Ghana should comply with Article 149 of the Constitution and assent or approve the recommendation of the Judicial Council on the review of our salaries and related allowances.
A separatist group in Cameroon's crisis region claims responsibility for the killing of a journalist late Sunday. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is James Adjapong with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. Let's begin in Senegal as the opposition coalition, Here We Ask Can We, is calling for a new mobilization on May 19th to support the opposition leader Ousmane Sonko. Recall, he was served 6-month suspended prison sentence by the Dakar Court of Appeal for defamation and insult, a conviction that could eliminate him from the presidential race of February 2024. But Sonko, in the wake of the development at the press briefing late Tuesday, reiterated the stance, and I quote, a call to resistance. Abdullahi Hassan has more on this.
For the leaders of the opposition coalition, Here We Ask Can We, there is no question of history repeating itself, referring to the conviction of Karim Wade in 2015 for illicit enrichment and that of the former mayor of Dakar, Khalifa Sall, in 2018 for misappropriation of public funds. There are both ineligible candidates in the 2024 presidential elections. Here We Ask Can We denounces a new strategy of power to, and I quote, reduce the opposition to its simplest expression. Khalifa Sall, former mayor of Dakar, is a member of the Here We Ask Can We coalition. He says, since 2012, it is constant harassment that is manifested by the weakening of the democratic practice and life in our country. The people must be rallied to support Ousmane Sonko in this fight. While some leaders of the opposition coalition have agreed to a dialogue with President Macky Sall, Here We Ask Can We is calling for unity and solidarity of the group. The coalition announces a march on May 19, 2023. In a social media feed, opposition leader Ousmane Sonko called for resistance and to respond massively to the demonstration of F-24 on May 12. The movement, which includes 100 political parties and civil society organizations, is launching the first of a series of demonstrations against the third-time candidacy of President Macky Sall in the next presidential election. The Senegalese president is, however, yet to confirm or deny this claim.
Abdullahi Hassan filed that report. The African Union AU says it welcomes the holding of a constitutional referendum slated for June 18, 2023 in Mali. Chairperson of the Continental Board, Musa Faki Mahamat, in a statement reiterated that the adoption of a new constitution is essential to restore constitutional order. The African Union Commission further comments all the efforts deployed by the transitional authorities in achieving this goal. Imo Edit reports.
Bamako, as part of readiness for the June 18 event, has established the independent electoral body and instituted respective mechanisms aimed at ensuring the rapid and effective operation of the transition calendar. The interim president, Assimi Goïta, has also called on Malian political actors, religious groups, civil society and other stakeholders to engage with the transitional authorities in building an inclusive, democratic and capable state. But this reality remains blurry since many of them disagree and have called for its cancellation over some claims, among them secularism and excessive power granted to the office of the president. Ibrahim Khan, a governance expert, says
there are so many uncertainties on this referendum, which means that is it going to solve the problems of Mali? If you look at it on the ECOWAS eyes, maybe, because now they have at least a constitution. But in concrete terms, no, because the problem remains on the ground. Part of the population have not participated in this referendum, so may not seem themselves liable. You need to have the political parties involved in the preparation. You need to have a campaign organized, at least in the country, usually is about 3 weeks. But where are they going to organize all those campaigns and think when the security in the country is not a reality?
However, African Union is urging the transition to resolutely open up to all political and social actors and collectively work for the success of the referendum by putting the country's interests first. Musa Faki Muhammad assures of the organization's support to Mali and its population in effective and smooth implementation of the transition process before the next election scheduled for March 2024.
Imwedit filed that report.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
If you are just tuning in, this is Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, and we are streaming all around the world on WADR.org. Human rights defenders in Guinea are relieved after the Rapid Intervention Battalion based at Soronkoni, 600 kilometers from the capital Conakry, was disbanded. Several Guinean human rights organizations accused the military base at this camp of torture. Some say they have collected testimonies from young demonstrators who were transferred to this military camp after their protests in Conakry. Tofik Abdul Nasir brings us more details in this report by WADR's Conakry correspondent Cherno Afa Ibrahima Badi.
Located in Upper Guinea, 600 kilometers from the capital Conakry, the Sononkoni camp was previously occupied by soldiers belonging to the Rapid Intervention Battalion. It has been cited in several reports by national and international human rights organizations as a place of detention and torture of opponents. Kali Jallo is the country director of the Violence-Free Program.
You may remember young activists being arrested and held in the Sorokoni camp. They count among many others. I remember on the eve of the famous referendum and the parliamentary elections, a dozen young people were also picked up and sent to Sorokoni and subjected to torture. Today, if there is a movement that manages to dissolve this camp where the practices of torture were committed, it will be a great sign of relief.
For the vice president of the Guinean Human Rights Organization, the dissolution of the Soronkoni Rapid Intervention Battalion will put an end to the cases of torture reported in this military camp. Here is Alpha Amadou Diasba.
We would have liked the safe and simple elimination of this camp or its relocation, but the most important thing is a change of mentality and above all the application of the relevant laws, because we all know that torture is prohibited not only by national law but also by all conventions.
Several human rights organizations accuse them of torturing members of the opposition who were deported there between 2010 and 2021.
Tofik Abdul Nasir with a report by WADR's Conakry correspondent Cherno Afa Ibrahima Badi. In Ghana, the National Labour Commission, NLC, has invited the leadership of the Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana, JUSAG, to a meeting over the threat of an indefinite strike. The request was contained in a letter addressed to the leadership of the Staff Association and is scheduled for today, Wednesday. The Judicial Service Staff Association had earlier given the government up to Friday, May 12, 2023, within which to approve and pay them new salaries with all arrears from January to May 2023 or face a shutdown. WADR's Atiawene Bella Lawson in Accra has more.
According to the Judicial Service Association of Ghana, a letter addressed to President Nana Akufo-Addo requesting the payment of salary arrears has gone unanswered, and any attempts to get answers from the government have been unsuccessful. Al-Hassan Yakubu is the General Secretary of the Staff Association.
Our demand is that the President of Ghana should comply with Article 149 of the Constitution and assent or approve the recommendation of the Judicial Council on the review of our salaries and related allowances. for implementation in the month of May with all the arrears.
The Staff Association also sent a letter to the Executive Secretary of the National Labour Commission with similar demands. In the document, the association acknowledged the economic challenges in the country and the withdrawal of the cost of living allowance in December 2022. In response, the Labour Commission has invited the leadership of the association to a meeting and asked that they call off their intended strike in the interim. Abdullah Yakubu says members will only consider calling off the intended strike after the outcome of today's meeting.
Even though they would have stated it in their letter, the outcome of tomorrow's meeting will determine what will be the fate of our planned industrial action. But as far as we are concerned, our plans are still as they are.
Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin Imbila Lawson in Accra.
And now to financial news. Nigeria's Apex Bank plans to sanction shipping companies exporting undocumented cargoes out of the country. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Godwin Emefiele, read out the Riot Act on Tuesday at the RT200 Non-Oil Export Summit 2023, organized by the bank in the nation's capital. WADR Susmanuma in Abuja reports.
While speaking on the theme, Challenges and Prospects to Success, Emefiele detailed the importance of diversifying from oil exports. The Apex Bank governor warned exporters who disregard several warnings to follow due process in ensuring their documentation met the needed criteria for export.
The central bank will be beaming some searchlights on undocumented exports. And we had advised the shipping lines at that meeting that we would also be monitoring, and if we find that they export cargoes without documentation, that we will penalize them, including placing their accounts on PND, post-no debit, and I'm sure we all know what post-no debit means.
Enumerating the successes of the RT200, Emefiele revealed that earnings from non-oil exports increased by 40% from $3 billion in 2021 to $5.6 billion at the end of 2022. Speaking on bolstering foreign reserves and maintaining a robust balance of payment position, Governor of the Apex Bank remarked that in the first quarter of 2023, a total of $1.7 billion was repatriated to the economy.
Available data shows that repatriation due to the program increased by 40% from $3 billion in 2021 to $5.6 billion at the end of 2022. In the first quarter of 2023, a total of $1.7 billion was repatriated to the economy, while about $970 million was sold into the INA window year to date.
For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Osman Omar reporting from Abuja.
A new health report has revealed stagnation in efforts to reduce premature death of pregnant women, mothers and babies. The last 8 years, according to the World Health Organization, had the highest count due to declining investment in maternal and newborn health. As Oge Obiorika report, the WHO report released on Tuesday indicated around 290,000 maternal deaths each year since 2015.
The report, titled Improving Maternal Newborn Health and Survival and Reducing Stillbirth, showed that progress in improving survival has stalled since 2015. WHO says each year globally there are about 290,000 maternal, 1.9 million stillbirths, and 2.3 million deaths. The UN Health Agency additionally estimates that more than 4.5 million women and babies die every year during pregnancy, childbirth, or the first few weeks after birth. This figure equates to one death every 7 seconds, mostly from causes that are preventable or treatable if proper care were available. The COVID-19 pandemic, rising poverty and worsening humanitarian crises have intensified pressures on overstretched health systems, the WHO added. According to a survey, around 25% of countries still report ongoing disruptions to life-saving pregnancy and postnatal care and services for sick children. Beyond the revelation, the WHO proceeded with solutions to addressing the health challenge, which includes more and smarter investment in primary health care. Every woman and baby, wherever they live, Anshu Banerjee, Director of Maternal, Newborn, Child and Adolescent Health at the WHO, says needs the best chance of health and survival.
Okay, Obiarika with that report. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, and here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese opposition coalition, Yewwi announces a massive rally on May 19th to support its leader Ousmane Sonko. The African Union, AU, pledges support to Bamako as the transitional authorities prepare for the June 18th referendum. The Judicial Staff Association of Ghana threatens an indefinite strike if negotiation with the Labour Commission fails. A separatist group in Cameroon's crisis region claims responsibility for the killing of a journalist late Sunday. Still ahead, we have our newspaper review, guest interview, and some sports updates. Kindly stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
It's 16 minutes past 12 in our studios here, and this is West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and all around the world on WADR.org. We head to Cameroon, where a separatist group known as the Ambazonian Defense Forces claims responsibility for killing a 26-year-old journalist late Sunday in Pap in the northwestern region. The video published Tuesday came days after the attack that killed Agne Ndeinso, the regional bureau chief for a weekly newspaper, The Advocate. Until the footage surfaced, the identity or organization responsible for Nso's murder was unknown. Marty C. has more details.
On Sunday, an attack against journalist Agne Ndeinso by two men on a motorbike led to his death after the assailants shot at him. Of the two bullets, one penetrated his chest while the second aimed for his head. He sadly died on the way to the hospital before he could receive any medical care. The separatist group operating in Cameroon's Anglophone region in a video declared that Nso's case was a mistaken identity and not the target of the operation. Commander of the separatist group who spoke in the footage expressed regret over the incident, which said initially targeted a military commander that frequents the bar where Nso was shot. Not reason enough, according to the 30 journalists gathered in Bamenda with different placards to denounce the group's actions. They described the act as unacceptable and demand justice for Agne. For its part, the International Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, is calling on the Cameroonian authorities to carry out a thorough investigation and ensure the prosecution of the perpetrators. Since 2017, the two English-speaking regions of the Central African nation, namely the Northwest and the Southwest, have been circled by conflicts between government forces and armed separatist groups.
Marty C. filed that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
For our newspaper review for today, let's join our correspondent in Banjul, Sankole Janko.
Hello and welcome to the press review coming to you from Banjul, the Gambia. I am Sankole Janko. And we begin today's press review with the Standard newspaper, whose lead story reads Gambia to get a single window system. We move on to politics, and this one says PPP's Jena Baba unveils plans for BAC, that is Brikama Area Council. She is, in fact, the only female candidate vying for chairmanship in that particular council election. Sidinjai says UDP supporting NATO alliance. Sidinjai is the deputy spokesperson for the National Ruling People's Party, who also happens to be the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly of the Gambia. We move on to another story, and this one says rape suspect acquitted for lack of credible evidence. Let's move on to the Point newspaper. Bullets land in Gambia as MFDC clash with Senegalese forces, with photos of soldiers with their rifles. This other story reads, Gambia's economy is not doing well. That's according to an economist. Army sergeant admits having worked for defunct NIA, that is the former National Intelligence Agency, now known as State Intelligence Service. And with regards to the mayoral elections, to withdraw from Brikama Area Council chairmanship race, according to the chairman of Independent Electoral Commission. Muslim Christian councils preach peace amid rising religious tensions. Let's move on to the Voice newspaper, whose lead story says, Pura accepts NAWIC tariff increment without consulting key stakeholders. That is according to CPC president. Now let's move on to the final story, and that is the Fourier newspaper. Today, it's similar to that of the Point newspaper because it has to do with the conflict in the Casamance region of Senegal, and it reads, people flee gunfire and cell strikes at Gambia-Senegal border. That's according to the lead story of the Fourier newspaper. Government's wasteful spending on COVID-19 food relief. That's according to the auditor's report. Political parties, candidates urged to observe electoral laws. And finally, deficit in pension fund increased to $41 million. That's according to the finance minister, Sidi Keita. These are the major stories making the headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Sankule, for that newspaper review.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The African Union Commission has commended all the efforts deployed by Mali's transitional government in holding a constitutional referendum slated for June 18, 2023. According to the chairperson of the continental body, Musa Faki Mahamat, this adoption of the new constitution is important to reinstate constitutional order. Our guest on the news this afternoon, Ibrahim Khan, a governance expert, comments on some of the complications in the build-up to the referendum. These are issues like the request for wider consultations by political groups and CSOs, secularism, legal process, and total involvement of all regions in the participation of the referendum. Another major concern is the call for the cancellation of the vote, which may warrant a second postponement of the national event after the 1st March 2023.
Well, this referendum is raising a number of concerns. First, about the process. This document prepared by the junta was supposed to be discussed by many actors, but they didn't have a chance to look at the document. And now they are asked to approve or to reject the document. That's one. And second, there is also in the process now a request by groups that are associated with Islamic organizations who are trying to really stop the adoption by raising their concern about the provision of the constitution that are related to secularism, because they believe that Mali cannot be considered as a secular state, that Mali should be really considered as an Islamic state. But more importantly, the question is, this referendum is supposed to be organized in the whole country. And everybody knows that half of the country is not under control of the state. Now, how the state will be able to organize the referendum, particularly in the northern part of the country, because if a referendum is not organized in that part of the country, that may be seen by the rebel groups as an indication that this region are no longer part of Mali, and which will raise another political problem in the future. 3, as I mentioned to you earlier, the fact that Mali, the territory is not totally controlled by the state, how can people be safe if they decide to go and vote for the referendum? And my last point is that there are a number of issues that was supposed to deal, and now I'm trying to talk about the content of the Constitution, the place of the head of state in the institution. Before, the country collapsed because everything was under the leadership or under the control of the head of state.
True.
Now, the new Constitution, rather than solving that problem in a very coherent manner, is giving more power to the president and is creating a kind of state that we don't know if it is a presidential or a presidentialist state. But at the end of the day, the parliament has less power than before.
Now, initially it was slated for March 13 or so, and now it's June 18, and you have more than a dozen CSOs and political parties calling for the cancellation of this. It means that Assimi Goita and his team are caught on a crossroad. If at all a cancellation occurs, it means that it will be postponed one more time, and this will affect the transition timetable, maybe. How do you think this will, affect Mali's relationship with ECOWAS, after this much mounted pressure for them to return to a constitutional rule?
Well, your question has two dimensions. Yeah, I'm not foreseeing right now, because I think everything that the military can do to remain in power, they will continue to do that. And probably if they come to the conclusion in the beginning of June that now the referendum cannot be organized in the totality of the territory, they may say to ECOWAS, you see, I have some problem on the ground, I can't organize this, can you help us define another date? That's one. Two, even if the decision is taken to organize the referendum with all these problems, once the document is accepted, now we will go for many other another big problem, which is the presidential election. Because the presidential election, once you need to know who is going to compete, you need to have the political parties involved in the preparation. You need to have a campaign organized, at least in the country, usually is about 3 weeks. But where are they going to organize all those campaigns and think when the security in the country is not a reality?
Ibrahim Makan is a governance expert. Now to some sports updates. Senegal's under-17 head coach Saliou Dia says his team will go all out when they take on South Africa in Wednesday evening's CAF Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations quarter-final. In athletics, Botswana Olympic medalist Nigel Amos is looking to sell the Olympic silver medal he won in 2012 after his 4 bans recently. And in basketball, St. John's University has signed Ghanaian forward Ibn Ayo Sadiku for the 2023-2024 season. The Kumasi-born joined St. John's from Iona College, where he played for a year. And that is it for sports. We have come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM, and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM Lofa County, and in Ghana on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. Christian Mukidi has been exceptional on the console. Do interact with us via our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek for our Facebook live coverage. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a rebroadcast of our agenda program 50/50 with Atiawene Bella Lawson taking you through. My name is James Adjapong. Good afternoon.
News, talk, music. Get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.
Here at West Africa